live with Coach Donna Marie on the Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast. And I am checking to make sure this is actually live. Give me just a moment to check on that because it won't be any good if it's not actually there. Let's see if it's actually there. Yes, it should be there. It should be live. Yes. With Coach Donna. We are live. We are live. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching or listening. If you are in the chat, I can actually see the chat today. I would love to have a conversation with you. If you're watching or listening and you're a caregiver, especially a caregiver to an adult who has a mental health condition, I would like to know what your questions are. There is so much. Dealing with these types of things is pretty complex. There's a lot of moving parts to supporting somebody who has been experiencing chronic mental health issues and needing, intensive therapy and medication and all of that. There are a lot of moving parts to being a good support for someone who is battling that. And I would love to be a good resource and a blessing if that's you, if that's what you've been going through and you feel like you need some support, you feel like you need to ask some questions and see, get perspective from somebody who's been through something similar. Hey, I'd love to be that for you. So if you're live with me, I can actually see the chat. Let me make this Zoom screen smaller. Zoom likes to take over your whole screen. If you'd like to chat with me today, I'd love to be able to give you feedback and support you. If you are listening or watching later, I'd love to be able to support you that way too. If you're a Spotify user, Spotify is actually great because they let you leave voice messages too, not just typed in messages. So if you're a Spotify listener, please do feel free to use the button that they provide there so you can leave me a voice message, and I'd love to give you feedback and support you and encourage you. It's not easy just taking care of your own self, let alone supporting somebody else who's battling a major chronic mental health condition. So I hope that I can be a help for you in that way, if that's something that you need. Now, I want to make sure that I introduce myself properly. I've been forgetting lately. I've been jumping right in and forgetting. My name is Coach Donna Marie, where I am Coach Donna Marie. My name is Donna Marie. And I am the host of the Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast. This is part of this live weekly as part of our podcast. Last week, I didn't go live, but I did post a pre-recorded video using an avatar. I was posting that video at 4 o'clock, 4:45 in the morning. So I was not going to be on camera at that time. But I used an avatar. And I know that that's pretty unusual. But I felt that it was appropriate for what I was doing. And I hope that you liked it. And if you didn't like it, I was on the fence about it myself. So it was something that I did because I needed that at that time. But I prefer to go live and be on camera with you, though with the hat on today because I am pre-haircut. I'm about to go get it. Wasn't able to get it before today. So the hat. And I just came from a walk. I just want to share a little something with you. In the last episode, we talked about things you can do. I said 4 things, but it was really 5 things you can do as a mental health caregiver to be able to survive and thrive after your loved one has a breakdown. One of those things I talked about, of course, was taking care of yourself. And so I want to dig a little deeper on that topic today. This one is tough for me to be vulnerable about because I'm a big girl, if you didn't notice, and I don't like discussing anything to do with my appearance or my health with other people because it's not anybody else's business. But I do want to share transparently a little about my journey because this is important. This is an important part of being a caregiver. You can't be a proper caregiver if you're not caring for yourself. I talked before in previous episodes about the fact that when you're taking care of other people and you don't even love yourself, how can you love somebody else if you don't love you? And part of loving you is all of you, your physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, financial, every part of your life. You have to take care of yourself. I talked in another episode about the fact that nobody's going to save you. If you're overweight, nobody can fix that but you. If you have major debt and financial problems, nobody's going to save you but you. The choices that you make will make the difference. But what happens is we get so caught up in our own heads about things. Sometimes we feel like there's no way out. We feel like we've been stuck. And I know from experience, I'm not just saying this from a theoretical standpoint. I know from experience how it is to feel like nothing's ever going to change. You're stuck in that forever. And that can be mentally and emotionally draining to feel that there's never going to be an end to your situation. But the good thing is that that's really never true. It is never true that you're stuck. You may feel stuck, but it's actually not true. There are steps you can take forward. The steps may be very incremental, might take a while, but there are steps forward that can be taken that can lead to change. If you think of this, oh, I wish I had a picture I wish there was a way for me to flip to this picture and show you all right now without messing up everything, but I'm scared I'm going to mess something up. So I'm going to leave everything as it is. But there are some arches that are naturally formed arches in an area, I think it's in Colorado, don't quote me on that, somewhere on the western side of the country of the USA. Natural arches that are naturally formed by erosion. These arches were not formed in one day. It took years, centuries, maybe even millennia for water to slowly erode these arches into the shapes that they have now. And I'll see if I can remember to put a photo of this. I know I've shared it before in at least one other blog article in the past. They're beautiful, these beautiful naturally formed arches. When I looked at them, I thought to myself, man, that reminds me of the golden arches for McDonald's, but this is naturally formed. It was amazing. It's amazing what water can do over time to shape things. If any of you all that are watching or listening have been to the Grand Canyon or something similar to the Grand Canyon, you know water is powerful, but you can't see the changes right away. It takes a long time. That's the same thing with you. As you transform yourself, as you plant your seeds of transformation, it takes time. I'll give you a gardening example. If you've ever tried to germinate a seed and get it to grow, it looks like it's dead until it doesn't, right? So you plant that seed in that dirt, you water it, you follow whatever the instructions say. Some seeds have to be germinated in the dark, some need to be around a warm source or heat. But whatever you're going to do, you're putting that seed in the ground. You can't see it. It looks like it's dead until it's not, until you start seeing the little sprouts coming up through that dirt. It looks like nothing's going on. It takes time. And unfortunately, the contemporary culture we live in, it's all about fast and now. And that is just not healthy for any human being to be so short-sighted and impatient. It's dangerous. It leads people to defraud. I got a chance. One of my favorite podcasters is Diary of a CEO. It's a guy from England. He's part of the England's version of Shark Tank, which is called Dragon's Den. So he's a dragon on Dragon's Den. And he actually is a podcaster with a very popular podcast called Diary of a CEO. He does amazing interviews. And so I don't usually like to watch interviews with fraudsters and former convicts, people who committed white collar crimes and now they're on somebody's podcast show. I don't usually like to watch those types of podcasts, but I couldn't stop watching when he did an interview with the guy that did the fire festival. So apparently this guy just got out of prison like 3 months ago. He had a 6-year sentence. He got out early. I think he got out after 5 years or 5.5 years, something like that. And he was being interviewed on the Diary of a CEO podcast. And I was like about to skip it. But I heard some things in the preview or introduction to the video that caught my attention. And I said, well, let me take a listen for a little while and see if this makes me nauseous or not. So I just couldn't stop watching. I watched it all the way through. It was a very good interview. I felt that the host asked very good questions. And I'm not going to share my opinion. My opinion of the guest is not relevant. But what I will share is this. When you are making choices that are based on trying to prove yourself to somebody else, trying to puff your chest up, operating out of pride, operating out of being impatient with the process that it takes to normally get things done, then you will take shortcuts. And this is what the guest talked about, which I commend him for recognizing that. You'll take shortcuts when you're impatient, unwilling to wait for the process to play itself out. And that's not good. That's not healthy for you and for those around you, because your choices are ultimately going to impact all the people around you. That's just the way that goes. And so cultivating patience, and I know this is true for me. I'm not trying to preach at anybody. I'm sharing, I've learned this in my own life too. I have not had a good track record of being patient. And that has led to some of the choices that I've made in the past financially, which were not good for me. But I've been getting a little better with this. I've been learning how to be a little bit more patient and making different decisions because I was willing to be patient. And I've shared with you all about my journey doing remote work. And that work is actually a business. It's not, it's a 1090 contract business, subcontracting business. It is not a W-4 job. This has required a lot of patience of me, and therapy actually helped me with that. Yes, I'm going back to that topic again, y'all. Yes, I am, because I know how therapy really helped me. Now, I told y'all in other episodes, to find a therapist takes time, that a therapist that's a good fit for you. It takes time. You have to kind of try different therapists out until you find one that works for you. And even the ones that work for you, you may not be able to be with them forever. So I'm just trying to make sure that I get this point across, that maturing, growing up, sometimes that takes some extra help from outside of you. Sometimes it's not going to be enough to read a book or watch a podcast. Sometimes you're going to need additional support. So I highly recommend, if you find yourself really struggling in this area of being more patient, you may want to have a therapist to help you think about that, become more curious about it, and understand yourself better so you can make better choices. This is not easy. It's difficult to change patterns that you've gotten stuck in from your past for whatever reason. It is difficult to change patterns. Excuse me, y'all. I forgot to put my AirPods in, and that means we're going to have all kind of background noise, and background noise is going to interfere with this. So let's see if we can switch our audio over here. And I'm so glad that I have the opportunity to talk with you all about this. I know that people who are dealing with chronic mental health conditions, sometimes this is a big problem, is being patient with the process. Recovery takes time. Any addicts will tell you it takes time. You can't get instant results when you're dealing with deep trauma, when you're dealing with actual physical, mental health things that have to be addressed with medication. Medication adjustments take time. That's why many people who have chronic mental health conditions go in and out of the hospital over and over and over again over different periods of time, because they literally have to be in the hospital for the medications to get adjusted. And it takes time, sometimes weeks. And so, as a caregiver who is caring for someone with a mental health condition, if I was not patient, oh, it would not be good for them. And also, if I'm just checking on the settings here, y'all, give me a second. Okay, so we should have the right audio and video going on. Whew. If I was not much more patient than I used to be, there's no way that I could be a mental health caregiver to my loved one who's been struggling. And I'm not going to get into details about that. I'll just say this. You can't have two impatient people. Many times people who are in recovering from mental health conditions are extremely impatient. They're irritated, agitated, anxious. Like, many people are prescribed drugs just for the anxiety. You can't have a caregiver that's anxious and impatient. And so if that's a struggle for you, A, get help, but B, maybe you're not the right caregiver. You do not want to take steps towards taking care of somebody else, and you're not willing to take care of your own self, or you're not ready to take care of your own self. So this is something that you can be curious about. Ask yourself, is this a good fit for you to do this, to provide that kind of support to somebody who is struggling themselves with anxiety, depression, psychosis, whatever it is that they're struggling with? Is this a good fit for you to even provide that kind of support to them? It's hard. We want to be able to step up and help somebody else. But if we're not thriving ourselves, if our cup is not overflowing, then every pour from our cup is going to empty it more and more and more, and eventually be completely empty. And if you have a breakdown yourself because you're busy trying to help somebody and you're not in a good position to help them, that's not gonna help. That's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt you, it's gonna hurt them. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're really struggling with anxiety and impatience, and you're not ready to get support around that yet, then you may want to think twice about becoming a mental health caregiver. When I say mental health caregiver, that could look different ways. A mental health caregiver could be somebody that's physically helping somebody that's dealing with mental health crisis. You're looking at their meds, making sure they're taking their meds properly. You're corresponding with the providers who are helping them, the psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, whatever, or even mental, physical health doctors, regular health doctors. You're taking them to appointments and meetings and groups and therapy and physical checkups. You're making sure that they have what they need in terms of the actual foundational things: money, a place to live, transportation. It could be all of those things, but a mental health mental health caregiver can also just be someone who maybe you don't live with them. Maybe you just check in with them and you go with them. Maybe you take them to appointments. Maybe you check in and make sure that they are going to their meetings or attending their therapy sessions. Mental health caregiving, I suppose, and I'm not an expert, so I'm not sure. I suppose it could have a lot of different aspects based on the person's needs. So, are you able to meet those needs without it destroying you? And if that answer is no, then that's okay. There's no shame in that. And trust that God will provide them with the help they need. If you're not the one, He'll send someone else. And sometimes when we get, I'll just be honest, in savior mode, codependency, we want to be able to be everything and do everything for the people that we love. But sometimes that's just not possible. Sometimes we have to leave it in other people's hands. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. So if it's a situation where you feel like you need to leave it in someone else's hands, then again, you can also get support for yourself around that, around what that could look like. You can talk to maybe a case manager or a social worker or a therapist and get support around understanding how else your loved one can get support and being supportive of them in that process. That's a way to support them. But sometimes trying to do all of this in your own strength and your own wisdom or lack of wisdom is a mistake. Sometimes you need to talk to other people who understand these things and can give you the proper feedback and the proper wisdom that you don't already have, so that you'll be able to see things better and be okay with that. So another thing, if you are a person who is very negative, very pessimistic, you have a hard time seeing the future for what it could potentially be, you also may not be a good fit to be a mental health caregiver, because part of being a mental health caregiver is being a championing rather that person's progress and not being a Debbie Downer or a negative Nancy for them, not being a critical, judgmental person for them, not being a person that's going to put shame and guilt on them. They don't need any of that kind of stuff. And if you can't be an encouragement and a support and a cheerleader for them, then maybe you don't need to be trying to be their mental health caregiver. You may be sabotaging them instead of helping them. And if that's where you're at, do you really love them? If you do, then you'll choose to step aside and let people who can be that for them be that for them. You'll step aside and let them do that if you can't. So I want to encourage you to think about these things, because mental health really is life or death. And people don't like to talk about it, but it's the truth. If somebody is suicidal and you're not being a positive help for them, then honey, you need to move out the way. Now, I want to make sure that I say all this to say this. I am also recovering from mental health things, and I do not have a mental health caregiver. I do have therapists. Sometimes I have coaches when I have the resources and time to hire coaches. Mostly, I read lots of books, watch lots of podcasts, I educate myself, and I stay in therapy. I've been in therapy now for at least a good 3 years with different therapists. Most of that time I've been with one therapist, but um, there have been changes in there based on my needs and also my family needs. And I've had to make a decision to separate myself from negative people that are pessimistic and judgmental and critical because I know that's not good for me. And that is part of my mental wellness journey. Part of my mental wellness journey is keeping myself away from things that are not good for me, things and people that are not good for me. I'm also starting to make some different choices about how I spend my free time. And this is definitely helping me. And I got, so remember I was talking earlier about taking care of yourself? Okay, so not just in terms of going to therapy, taking care of yourself, but doing things that bring you joy. So I got to do a couple of things today that brought me joy because I gave myself extra time in my day and it enabled me to have time for these things. One of those was to vote. That was a way to honor my ancestors. And I always, whenever I go to the polls, I just feel this weight of their presence with me. And I've been very emotional today. I don't know why, but I have been. And I began to cry as I went to the polls and put my put my voting card into the machine and did all the things. That brought me joy. I was crying, yes, but it brought me joy to know that I'm remembering them in that way. I remember the sacrifices that our ancestors have made, but I also remember the lessons I learned from closer ancestors, my father, my grandfather. This was so important to them, and they instilled that in us, in our family. And I'm really grateful for that. So that was one thing I did that brought me joy today. The other thing that brought me joy today was there is a very nice walking trail right next to the polling place. I had been meaning to get over there, but I keep forgetting. I've not made it part of my routine to go over there yet. And so I went walking and just was overjoyed to be out in nature. A little squirrel seemed like he was kind of putting on a show for me. I kept taking pictures and videos of him. He came, I heard him further away. And as I continued to stay, there was like a creek and a bridge. And as I continued to stay around this bridge, he kept coming closer and closer to me. Eventually, he was like right in front of me on a branch, chewing on the nut. I think he was chewing on the nut. I don't know what he was doing, but he was sitting there right in front of me. That was so cool. And so, as you can see, the smile on my face, nature brings me a lot of joy. So, not just seeing a therapist or even the exercise part. So, me walking, that was part of my journey towards getting more exercise, taking better care of my physical body, but it was also part of my mental and emotional care for myself because I love nature. That's been a part of who I am for my entire life. I love nature, I love animals, and I particularly love the smell of fall. I grew up in Illinois, Chicago, and there's just certain smells, the smells of the rotting leaves. I love the smell of fall, the smell of the leaves. And in Chicago, we had we had crab apple trees in a lot of places, and nobody would eat those crab apples. They would just fall off the trees and rot. And I just love the fall smells. It was part of the fall smells. And so today, when I was in those woods, taking my little walk by that creek, all the fall smells were there. It smelled so good. And it just reminded me of the peace that I feel in nature. And at this time of year, with it being cooler Everything is so much easier for me to get out now. During the summer, it was 100 plus degrees for weeks and weeks. And so I just did not do my walking that I wanted to do. So that to say, taking care of yourself is not just about seeing a therapist, going to a gym. It's about doing the things that bring you joy. Learning to understand yourself better is a big part of that. It's a huge part of that. Learning to understand yourself better, to know yourself better, especially if you've been a person that's been told that you were codependent. If you've grown up shaping yourself to other people's, what other people want you to do or say or think or believe, and not really understanding your own wants and desires and likes, then that's something you can work through in therapy. Learn to understand yourself better so that you'll know what you like. And then you can start going after your goals and your dreams, going after your wants and desires from a healthy place. All right. I made a decision. I was going to keep these lives down to 30 minutes. I'm going over a little bit, but I wanted to just close out with that. Make sure that you take care of you, that you learn to understand you better, that you love yourself better. And as you do that, you'll be able to be a better support for anybody in your life, not just as a mental health caregiver, for anybody you're around in your job, as a parent, as a child. You know, many of us have parents who are not young anymore. They're getting older and they have some support needs too. You'll be able to be a bigger help and a blessing to everybody that you care about when you love you better and take care of you better. So I just wanted to encourage you, think about these things, please. Make sure that you leave a comment. If you're on Spotify, leave me a voicemail. I'd love to answer your questions regarding um, things that you need to understand better so you can have more hope and not give up just because you're dealing with trauma or crisis. All right, God bless you.